Hello class. This chapter we're dealing with human resources, and it's probably one of the most pragmatic, most relevant part of the course. Usually the human resource section takes almost a semester to learn because it's so relevant in your life as an employee and as a manager, as an owner of a company. So I recruited the help and the assistance of a friend of mine, Carlos, and he's going to give you a very pragmatic, very genuine, very experience-oriented lecture. Also, we'll have a case study that relates to just, again, simple mistakes that some supervisors or managers make that could cause a lawsuit. So Carlos and I will be selecting a case study that's very recent and very relevant. Again, please pay attention to Carlos. He has over 20 years of experience in human resources. He's also a former community college student, and he understands the hustle and bustle of being a full-time community college student and also being a full-time parent and employee or a business person. So I'm glad, Carlos, you accepted my invitation, and do what you're best at. Thank you for coming in and doing a customized lecture for the class.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity and hope that you enjoy the information that I provide to you today. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carlos Covarrubias. I'm a human resources specialist, director, manager. My whole career has been in human resources, over 21 years in the public sector, and I'm here today to explain to you and inform you on what is human resources. So let's start back with the history of human resources. Started back in 1935 with the National Labor Relations Act, which provided workers the right to organize and be represented by unions. And so this is a very turbulent time in the history because there was no unions before or representation for the common worker. And after the National Relations Act, this allowed employees to organize and push for better wages and terms and conditions of employment. Next, we have the federal, what's called the Fair Labor Standards Act, and this set the minimum wage, and it allowed for overtime pay and for rules and regulations regarding pay. How many hours can you work in a day? How many hours make up a week? And so the standard is a 40-hour week, and that's where we get that from. Other federal laws governing human resources is Equal Employment Opportunity Act, which allowed for non-discrimination based on sex, origins, race, age, or any type of disability. Later on came the FMLA, which covers Family Medical Leave Act, which allows employees that have medical conditions to not be subject to discipline or actions against them when they are missing work for medical conditions. Okay. We also have the ADA, what's called the American Disabilities Act, which prohibits discrimination based on any disability, physical, mental, or emotional, against employees. So human resources is what we call it today. There's other names that are common out there. Talent management is one of them. And then the early stages of human resources, it was called the personnel office or personnel transactions. And so from that, we go on to the functions of human resources. So we've covered the laws, and I'll pause briefly. Okay, now that we've covered the laws and the history of human resources, let's cover some of the functions. Human resources, the front end of it is recruiting. So what are we doing when we're recruiting? We're putting out job announcements. We're letting candidates know what the qualifications, the salary, the due date of the application, and some of the requirements of the position. And so that's how it really starts. Human resources is recruitment. The recruitment process may entail a testing. So that could be in the form of an interview, it could be a written examination, or it could be a performance test. So performance tests are usually hands-on, where you demonstrate the knowledge, skills, and abilities, and whether you know how to perform certain actions. For example, a machinist would do an examination on a CNC machine, demonstrating that he knows how to calibrate and program the machine to do the functions. A clerical test might entail lots of filing, alphabetizing, and multiple choice questions, some mathematical or arithmetic calculations, so you can see if you have knowledge of basic mathematics. It could entail public relations or public human relations type questions, so that we can gauge your knowledge of customer service and how you interact with customers or clients. After the recruitment process is done, the goal is to select the best qualified candidates based on the test scores, or a combination of the test score and interview process, so that we can combine a hiring list, and then we recommend the top qualified candidates to the department with the vacancy, and then they would do a second interview. So we do a second interview. The finalist is selected for the position. It is recommended by the department to Human Resources, and now Human Resources has the task of doing the onboarding process. So what does that onboarding require? Onboarding requires a background check, and that's where we get into whether or not the candidate disclosed information regarding his background. And so most companies will do a live scan, fingerprint screening, and with results coming in within 48 hours. So if someone, for example, did not disclose that they have a prior conviction for a position, and it's they go for fingerprinting and it comes out that they do have a prior conviction, that's an automatic disqualifier. So remember, being honest is the best practice. Anything that you omit from your application is subject to disqualification from the job. Onboarding also requires that you complete forms such as the I-9, which is federal form to cover proof of citizenship or right to work documents. It also requires your W-2 form, where you claim your dependents, and that goes into your taxes and the payroll processing. Onboarding also would confirm your compensation for the position. So compensation could be advertised as a range on the job announcement. This is where you negotiate a starting salary. Some companies do have a policy of starting you on the lowest salary until you pass a probationary period, and then you're eligible for salary increases. So there's different types of compensations plans. There's one based on annual or performance evaluations, and then it is recommended that you get an increase or you don't get an increase. And there's others that are just automatic. So you gotta be informed that what type of compensation plan does your company offer. Also, there's job classifications. Human Resources is responsible for classifying every position. And what does that mean? That means that we have to go into the job itself and write down all the details about what the person is performing. Are they spending much time doing clerical work? Are they doing analysis work? Are they doing technician work? Are they doing management work? So all those types of levels are separated on paper, and that the job is given a classification which describes examples of duties. Again, your knowledge, skills, and abilities that are required for that job are also there in the classification plan. So Human Resources also manages the benefits administration of a company, and that means that some companies provide the most common ones are medical, vision, and dental coverage. Other companies may offer something like 401k, matching funds towards retirement. Other companies offer more lucrative retirement plans such as PERS or STIRS.
Finished?
Okay, now let's go to section 3 of Human Resources. Now we've covered the history, and we've covered the recruitment and onboarding process. And one of the other functions and responsibilities of Human Resources is to monitor your employment, right? You work for a company, you're on your first day on the job, and what's going to happen to that employee. So there's a life of an employee within a company. An employee can start work, they can fail probation. Some positions do require 6 months probation. That means that you have a probationary period, which is on the job testing. And that's usually a 6-month test. If you don't pass that, then they're within the law of the company to simply just terminate your employment. However, if you're a good performing employee, there's chances that you can promote within the company. So you come in at an entry-level position, you demonstrate that you're responsible, and that you can go above and beyond what the position requires. You add extra hours, you're always committed to the company mission, and that can result in a promotion. And there's also reassignments within human resources, meaning there's large companies that accept transfer requests. So you could be located in one position, on one site, however you could transfer to another site. So that's also a responsibility of HR to move the person within the organizational structure from one site to another site. Other things that may happen while an employee is employed is they may go on sick leave, right? So that's what we talked about, the Family Medical Leave Act. So that means that someone's going to be out on 6-month leave. HR has to then quickly replace that person with another provisional or temporary employee. Another thing that can happen while you're on the job is that you spend 30 years at the company and you retire from the company. So that simply means that your retirement age and you apply for retirement and you separate from the company. Some of the perks of staying with the company a long time and the longevity of your employment is that some companies offer some retirement packages. Therefore, you would get a better retirement wages or compensation once you retire from the company. One of the most unfortunate separations from a company or terminations is when someone is separated for cause. What does that mean? That means that there was some disciplinary issues with the employee. There's probably been some documentation of the discipline, and ultimately it ends up what we call is labor or employee relations, where employees are disciplined and sometimes are recommended for termination. And so lots going on in human resources from the first day that we recruit, 30 years later to when someone retires. And that's a brief overview of human resources.